Hey everybody, welcome back. Now look, there are two hurdles whenever we do anything creative. The first of which is actually starting the thing, getting it going, getting it off the ground. But the second thing that doesn't get talked about enough is how to actually continue with the project to its completion. The question that we have to answer is how the heck do we stay motivated to actually create the thing that we started to create in the first place? That's what this video is all about. I can promise by the end of this, you're gonna have more tools to understand how to stay motivated when the last thing you wanna do is create something. We're reviewing Austin Kleon's third and final book, Keep Going, and it's 10 ways to stay creative in good times and bad. If you want to learn more about creativity, I post a video every single week talking about the creative process, how to overcome creative hurdles, how to stay motivated. So feel free to subscribe. And if there's a book I haven't yet read on creativity that you think I should, feel free to comment it below, like it, share it with your friends. So there's going to be 5 things that we're going to approach throughout this video on how to actually stay motivated to continue creating for a lifetime. And they are as follows. Uncovering the secret of the same. Ooh, cryptic. Falling in love with play. A little bit more straightforward. Considering the lilies. Biblical. The fourth of which is recognizing art as hope. And learning to go with the seasons. The first thing that we're going to talk about is discovering the secret of the same. What do I mean by that? That's a cute little turn of phrase that I'm using here. But the secret of the same is understanding that you're not necessarily meant to feel like the art that you're creating, it gets easier. Or maybe the creative thing that you put your hand to, sometimes it just stays as difficult as it is. And yes, the more that you internalize the systems of creativity that you have, the better that you get at it, the easier it's going to become. But you're always going to have those sneaky feelings of, oh, maybe I don't sit down and hit record today, or oh, maybe I don't work on my craft, or maybe I don't plan for that meeting, or whatever it is for you. We're always tempted to take a step back and assume that it should be getting a little bit easier. But the secret is understanding that it's just kind of difficult to create things. But there are ways around it. And the first way that Austin Kleon talks about is he treats every day like Groundhog Day. And I love that image, and it's obviously based off of the movie. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. Groundhog Day. Link is not in the description, but you know what I'm getting at. Groundhog Day is when Bill Murray gets stuck in the exact same day, and he lives it over and over and over again. And there's this moment when it turns from like a torture to something very enjoyable. And it's when he recognizes, oh, this is just the way that things are. The way that things is. This is just the way that things are. And I find the same to be true in our creativity. Oftentimes we have that kind of buyer's remorse whenever we put our hand to a project. We go, man, I wish I would have done this differently, or I wish I would have done this instead of made that. And what I find is that as long as we're giving the attention to the project that we're working on and treating it as if we have all the time in the world to work on it, then we're actually going to enjoy the creativity even if it is a little bit challenging. Hope that makes sense. And there are tricks to actually making the same thing a lot more fun, but we're going to get to that in point 3 when we're talking about lilies. We'll get there in a second. Now to point 2, falling in love with play. Many of you have probably listened to me yap before, and if you haven't, hi, welcome. But I talk about play all the time. And the reason I talk about play all the time is because I've read a lot of books on creativity, and every single one of them talks about play. It's as if it's this red thread that runs throughout every single creative person's mind. It's that the thing that we're putting our hand to, the thing that we're working on, the project that we've started that we're laboring over and that we really don't want to keep going with, it's oftentimes an indication that we're taking it way too seriously. I think back to when I was young and I was outside playing with my brothers, and I would find like a stick, and that stick would take on so many different forms. It would be like a wand, or then it would be like a hiking stick, and then it would be something that I would use to draw with. And then at the end of the time that I was hanging out with my brothers, I would always have this kind of like sentimental connection with this inanimate object. I'm not sure if you're like that, but I would never want to let go of it. But what I realized is that there's always going to be another stick. And that's the same thing with creating things and staying motivated to create things. The more willing we are to say, I'm going to put my energy to this, and then I'm going to let it be what it is, the less energy we put towards making it feel like it's something that's super serious. And so in order to fall in love with play so that we can create things for the rest of our life, is we have to fall out of love with our insecurities. And that's a lot easier said than done. It's so much harder to actually come to grips with the fact that I don't like the way that my nose looks, or I think my hair is not great, or I actually don't feel competent enough to continue on with this project. You have to recognize, wait a second, these are the insecurities speaking. And when insecurities speak, what they do is they keep us in this little tiny box of fear. And the thing about fear is that it completely stifles our ability to create things. Again, because we're taking it way too seriously. Can I push a little further? I'm going to take that as a yes. We're taking ourselves too seriously. We're saying, oh, if I'm not viewed a certain way, if I'm not this prim and proper kind of a person, then people aren't going to love me. And yet what I've realized about life is that people love us for who we are. They don't love us for all the things and the way that we curate ourselves. And if they do, they're loving a false version of us. We're delving into philosophical discourse right now, and we'll talk about that later. Another kind of way to fall in love with play is to do something that Albert Einstein calls combinatory play. It's when you engage in a different discipline to try and unlock things with what you're doing currently. So if you're a writer and you hit this creative block and you're not too sure where to take the novel or the narrative, then I would encourage you to pick up painting, pick up drawing. And as you do that, it's going to shift the way that you view the writing itself. All forms of creativity change us when we engage in them. So if you're a baker or if you're a cook and you're trying to figure out a certain recipe for something, I would encourage you to try to write a poem. Do something in a different domain, and in doing so, it oftentimes unlocks the thing that you're trying to get through within your creative project. And so that's the second point. You have to fall in love with the play aspect of creativity, and you have to fall out of love with your insecurities. Then we have to consider the lilies. The reason I use this term, consider the lilies, not only is it scriptural, but it also comes from a book by a guy named Søren Kierkegaard. He's a Danish philosopher, and he says the sum total of mankind's discomfort and distress is that we cannot sit silent in the world in which we live, which is such a fascinating thought, because one of the pillars of learning is attention. Stanislas Dehaene wrote a book called How We Learn. I'll review it one day, but he talks about how one of the main pillars of learning is attention, the time we're able to give to something. And you listening right now, you're quite a few minutes into this video now, and you're getting a little antsy. You're like, ooh, am I enjoying this? Am I not enjoying this? And it's because it's testing your attention. Another way to proverbially consider the lilies is to take a piece of art and purposefully stare at a piece of art for 5 minutes. And you're going to feel this discomfort. I have a painting that one of my friends drew. Let me grab it. Shout out to Gabe. And it's this. I'm such a loser. But every time I kind of hit the wall of creative block, I oftentimes look at this painting. It's as if it takes my attention off of the thing that I'm working on and it puts it on something else that's really creative, and it helps kind of expand my horizon of creativity. And that's what happens when you consider the lilies. That's what happens when you consider the paintings. Then you have to realize on like a metaphysical level that art is hope. Art is saying that although we live in a world that's quite chaotic and crazy, that we can push back on that craziness by making something beautiful, by writing something beautiful, by leading in a way that is so contrary to the way in which the wildness of the world operates. To create art is to say that the brokenness we see around us, and for that matter, the brokenness we see in ourselves, it doesn't have the final say, that we can create something beautiful even in the brokenness in which we reside. This is a quote from the book. It's on page 124. It says, "The purpose of being a serious writer is to keep people from despair." When you create, when I create, what we're telling the world around us is that they can create too. You don't realize how many creative projects are going to be birthed by other people just by the fact that you've chosen to continue to work on the project that you first put your hand to. And that's actually what it means to stay motivated. It's to recognize that our art goes far beyond us. And within that, we have to understand that art ebbs and flows. This is the final point, which is art goes in seasons. And I mentioned this a bit with combinatory play with Albert Einstein. When you do something that's different than the project that you're working on, it gives you newfound perspectives. And the same is true with the seasons that you're living in. Whether that be physical seasons, like the fall and the spring and all the other ones that I am terrible at remembering. There's only 4. I can never get them in order, and so I just kind of leave them out. And I'm like, whatever. You're going to have new and different ideas during the winter than you are during the summer. I remember there was a time where during the summer I would go to the beach and I would just read philosophy on the sand. And I was like, oh my gosh, it just brought up such beautiful new ideas about life. And then there were seasons of life during the winter where I would literally just go on walks in the snow when it would be snowing outside, and I would walk around and I'd be like, man, it does something to you. And again, this video is about how to stay motivated. And oftentimes what I find is when we hit a wall, when we're working on something creative, it's because we're going against the season of life that we're in or the season that we're physically in. But again, how do we take this philosophical thought, bring it down to the practicalities of life? To go with the seasons is to understand if you're really tired or if you're going through a really hard time, then you have to figure out how much energy can you actually give to creativity so you can enjoy it. Or how much creativity do you actually need to give to it? Oftentimes I think, one, the project that we're working on is draining us and we can't give too much time to it. Or two, it actually brings us so much life and therefore we need to press into that. It's nuanced based off of the kind of person that you are, but you have to understand that in order to really create, in order to continue to create for the rest of your life, you have to go with the ebbs and the flows of all the challenges and the joys of what life brings and press into those and discover the new creative aspects of life as your life unfolds. Thanks again for watching. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to share it with somebody. If you know someone's been sitting on a creative project for a really long time and they haven't gotten it over the line, send it to them. Like, comment, subscribe, do all the things. And if you want to watch more, click on this video, click on that video, and I'll see you next week. Bye.